right now. I'll just go ahead and say that I'm Tony. I'm the IT director for VCEA, and we identified a need or a niche that WSU is providing lots of trainings on Zoom, on Blackboard, on Panopto, but we didn't have any specific guided direct access without watching several different videos. So we're taking time to give you a brief overview of Zoom and Zoom with Blackboard. With me is Steve Saunders, and he is with...
I'm in chemical engineering and bioengineering.
And Todd Vanek is, I guess, remote today, and he will be monitoring the chat for us and letting us know if we have any questions that we need to address. So we've split it up into a couple of different sections. The first section that we're going to do today is Zoom general info that applies to everyone that is going to use Zoom in your daily life to work. So that's going to cover meetings, setting up appointments, some waiting room talk, some of the basic to intermediate features of Zoom. Then we will take a break, allow people to get refreshment or use the restroom. And when we come back, then we will talk about Zoom in Blackboard, specifically setting up your course space, your class, getting that connected, publishing that content. So some of the information might be duplicated because what we're going to do is distribute separate video segments so that if you don't need the classroom portion of Zoom and Blackboard, then we can, you can just watch the section that pertains to you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Tom.
For the first part, and we'll get going. Great.
I just want to, Jacob, your question in chat will be in an advanced session later as well. That session is going to last likely the length of this session this morning, and I'm not sure there will be another one right now or later. That's something that we will decide internally if there was a need for that and based upon feedback. So it is likely being recorded as well. Todd can confirm that that's being recorded as well, and we'll make that recording available to anybody who wants that training.
And I'd say if we're doing another one of these trainings on Thursday, so it may be that we can do a parallel advanced training as well. We'll just have to see about staff availability for that.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, sorry, I had a little trouble actually logging into this one. I missed, is there a parallel meeting going on right now that's advanced? Is that what I'm hearing?
There is a parallel session happening right now that is more advanced. It is available in chat. Todd,
it's in the chat.
Can you drop that in chat again, Todd, the URL to the meeting ID? If you do not have the chat window up, at the bottom of your screen on that gray bar is a chat button. Go ahead and press that, and Todd will drop the URL in the chat again in case you missed it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. The advanced training is really focused on some tips and tricks to modify your class for online delivery, as well as some more advanced Zoom. It is really answering any questions that come up. They do have an outline for things, but it's really focused on things that you guys need for those advanced users.
Please check my chat note.
David, hold on one moment. I want to make sure we have this URL available for everyone.
I think we're missing a digit.
Sandy just dropped a link in. It was missing an extra 5. So Sandy just dropped in a link. Thank you, Sandy. That should be a link to the other session.
So one important thing to note is that's actually a WSU phone number, and that's because Alice has set that to be her personal meeting ID, and we will go over that later about where to set that, and it's a very handy tool. The meeting ID that you are all in right now, this is Tony speaking, the meeting ID that you're all in right now is my personal desk phone, and I set my Zoom meeting ID to be my desk phone so that I can always remember it. I will show you how to do that a little later.
Okay, so one thing I would like everybody to do at the bottom of your screen, if you're staying in this course session, there's a participants button. Please press that participants button. And at the bottom, there are some quick polls that you can do. You can raise your hand if you have a question. You can press yes or no to give instantaneous feedback. The go slower, go faster are good tips or good feedback to us if we're going too fast or too slow at any specific point. But can everybody open that participants window and give me a yes, please? We're almost there. You don't have the feedback to you guys, but that is feedback to us.
All right, who's the smart aleck that gave us a no?
Okay, thank you all so much. If you have questions, please raise your hand and drop it in chat. That's a great way of letting us know that there's a question and that we can go to chat to find that question. It allows us to be a little bit more focused. I believe Todd is in chat, who will be trying to answer questions in chat as they pop up, and he'll bring them to our attention if we need to broadly address them. So let's go ahead with some very basic Zoom basics. What I'm showing you on the screen is the screen that you should be presented with when you first install Zoom. It's actually really, really important that you log into Zoom appropriately. So if you are the host of a meeting, that means you are the core point, the point of contact for that meeting, or the instructor for a class. You want to ensure that you have the proper controls for that meeting. So you want to make sure you sign on via the WSU login. A lot of times, if you have simply installed Zoom and you clicked a link in an email to send you to a Zoom meeting, you may not be logged in appropriately. So if you look at your names, if you have Steve Saunders and then parentheses guest after your name, you're not logged in appropriately and you're only a guest to the system. So if you were trying to run a meeting or a class, you would not have the controls that you have as the host of that meeting. So to log in, make sure you press sign in and then sign in with SSO. That stands for single sign in. This is the WSU single sign on page. To access specifically the sign on for WSU, enter the company domain, and that is just WSU. And the rest .zoom.us is automatically there, and press continue. This should automatically open up, and I'm not connected to the internet on this machine.
It intentionally doesn't save credentials.
Sorry about this, guys.
Okay.
So once you hit OK or continue, you'll be sent to the WSU login screen, and then put in your network ID and your password and log in. It's not recommended that you save your credentials in your web browser. At that point, you'll automatically be sent to Zoom. And now you're logged in. So you can join meetings still. So if you have a network ID, you can just press join and put in the network ID that you want to join a meeting, or excuse me, a meeting ID. You can have chats with some of your colleagues. So if I see that Norbert Cruz is in the meeting. So if I wanted to start a chat with Norbert, I can go to chat, type in Norbert's name, and actually start a chat with Norbert. And you can actually start video conferencing directly from the Zoom client. This is an additional tool that you may want to use outside of Microsoft Teams or any other communication systems that you have set up already. Your meetings that are in your calendar will show up under meetings. So unless you do something extra, these are just things that are associated with your Zoom account. And you can just go to, if I was joining this training session, I would see this transitioning to online, and I could just press join. And that would put me into the training session. I'm not going to do that now because it's going to create a mess. Thank you, Eric. It's important to note that you can access the WSU domain, and I will get to this later, the WSU portal for Zoom at wsu.zoom.us. We'll be coming back to this page several times, and for the purpose of the video, if you haven't downloaded the client, this is where you should go. You should click on download client, and then it will pop up whatever system it automatically detects. So I'm on a Windows machine, it automatically detects that, and you should typically install the first link that shows up there. So I'm now going to go ahead and join my personal meeting space. So I'm going to just press the new meeting button. This drops me into my personal meeting space that it's just for me if I want. So if I want to hang out with myself, this is a great place to do it. You'll almost always be prompted with this join with computer audio. If you want to hear the meeting content through your computer, you should always accept join with computer audio. If for whatever reason you don't have good enough speakers or a headset, it might be something that you don't want to join with the computer audio, but you join meetings via your phone if that is a better connection choice for you. I think for a lot of people, joining with computer audio may be the best scenario. So when you join with computer audio, it will unmute you, and you can see that the microphone in the bottom left is bouncing green with the levels of my voice. I can mute myself by very quickly pressing that, and my voice is no longer being transmitted. You can select which audio source on your computer is being used. So you can see microphone, Realtek, this is built into the computer. There's a microphone on an attached camera that I can switch to, and you can also select what speakers you use. So you may want to use your computer speakers, or you may want to select a headset if you plug a headset into your computer. So these are just important options that you have to make sure that you have the best possible experience. Additionally, you can start and stop your video by pressing the stop video button. And when you press the stop video, you are no longer transmitting your video. It will just instead transmit your name that you are there present in the meeting. You can still select a video source here under the little arrow settings. So you can pick, this is an attached camera that I have. So if you don't have a camera built into your computer, you can attach a camera via a USB cable, and it will automatically be detected by Zoom, and you can select which camera you want here. So this is actually an external camera that, even though my computer is here, I'm looking at the screen, the camera is up and to the left. So it gives me just a little bit more options to control what I'm looking at. This is a little hint that you may want to do. If you press the little arrow button and go to video settings, under here are a couple little settings that you may appreciate. One is a touch-up appearance option, and this actually will smooth your face just a little bit. So if you're very concerned about how your video is being projected, you can pick touch up my appearance, and it will do some very simple smoothing of your face. You can also pick enable HD, and that will just send a little bit higher quality image out. But note, this takes up a little bit more of your network resources, so just be aware that if you are in a situation that you don't have a great internet connection, maybe that isn't something that you should do. Now, when you're in chat, or when you're in your own meeting, you can start inviting people to it. So you can press the invite button, and you can find anybody in your recent contacts, or you can type in a name. So again, Norbert, I saw, was in chat. And so I can invite Norbert simply by typing Norbert's name, pressing his name, selecting him, and then pressing invite. I don't want to pull Norbert away from the training session to my own personal meeting space, but that's how you can invite a small group of people to a quick meeting. Another important feature that you can do is how to manage our participants in the meeting. Tony, could you join this meeting? He's working on it right now. So you, as the host of your meeting, you can very carefully control what participants do in your meeting. So when you set up a meeting, and we'll discuss that later, it's important that you control to an extent, what people do in that meeting. And you do most of that through this Manage Participants button. So when you press this Manage Participants button, a second screen pops up, or a little pane pops up that will show everybody in your meeting. And so Tony is trying to join this meeting, and so you'll see him pop up. And so Tony just joined, and you can see Tony here, and you can see his camera, but Tony joined with audio, and that may not be something that I want to happen. And so I can very quickly mute everybody in chat by pressing the mute button. And note, there's a very important option here. Do you want to allow participants to unmute themselves? And so at the start of a class or at the start of a meeting, you may want to mute everybody. And depending on what you foresee for the rest of the meeting, you may want to keep them muted if you really want to focus on what the content is that you're delivering, or you may want to allow them to unmute themselves in case they have questions. So that is really a choice that you have to make for the meeting that you want. Once you mute everybody, the mute button turns blue, and then you can unmute everybody just at a click of a button. Additionally, when if Tony can give me a yes, through the meeting space, if Tony can give me a yes in the meeting space, you couldn't see this as a participant before, but when he gives me a yes, I see a quick counter right there. So this is a great way of doing quick polling for people in your meeting space. So you can get a quick sense of where people are, and you can have instantaneous feedback. He's also raising his hand. That may indicate to me that I want to acknowledge Tony and let Tony ask his question, or he may be trying to send a message to me in chat that I can also look at. You can start the chat by going to chat here, and now the chat window shows up as a pane below participants. And so anything that chat sends will be included there. And note, you can send meetings or messages to everybody, hi Tony, or you can very carefully send private meetings out. Now note, but besides right now, since the way I'm presenting this information to you, you can see everything here. But when you're hosting a meeting or teaching a class, this information is not sent out. So if a student sends you a piece of information that says, hey, I'm really worried about my grade, that's not probably the best place for that student to send that message, but if they send it as a private message, that is not shown to everybody, and that's only shown to you. Another really important option is recording your meetings or your content. So right now, the recommendation coming from the college is all classes should be recorded. Unfortunately, in the current environment, we can't ensure that everybody will always have access to come to your live class sessions. And so we want to make sure everybody has that opportunity to learn. And the best way of doing that is recording your lectures and then giving access to those lectures later. You can do this with a meeting if you find it useful as potentially a log of that meeting that somebody who couldn't attend could go to. But you can start the recording just by pressing the record button at the bottom. You have two choices. You can record it to this computer or record it to the cloud. I would really very much recommend that you record to the cloud overall. So when you press record to cloud, it will just essentially intercept your meeting up in the servers and make a recording of it. It records the audio, it records the video, it does record chat as well, the chat for everybody. And so it's really important that you make this available to your students. Not only will it record the audio, but it will also transcribe that audio. One of the things that you should be careful of is the transcription is not perfect. So you should go and download, and I'll show you this a little bit later, you can download that audio transcript and edit it to make sure it doesn't show things that it transcribed incorrectly. You can pause recording by pressing the pause button or stop recording just by pressing the stop button. I don't need to record this anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the rest of this recording. Now you may want to share content, whether it's your slides for your talk or a document camera or a virtual whiteboard. You can share your content simply by, at the bottom, pressing share screen. And a new window pops up that you can select what you want to share. You can share individual apps. So this one is actually the web browser that I have open, or this is just the Word app, and it will share just that one app. This might be a recommended course of action, because if you have a notification that pops up on your screen, maybe an email notification or that you're late for a meeting, it won't show that if you have not selected that app. So I'm actually going to share just Word. This could be PowerPoint, for example, and you can, once you select that, just press share. And now in this meeting, what is being sent out is simply this Word application. And as I resize the application, you can see this green box that's moving around. It is indicating what parts of my screen are being shared out. Now, Tony is in the meeting, and let's say Tony had a question about how I spelled advanced. And so Tony could annotate on this screen, and this is an option that's here on my screen. It may be at the bottom for some people. That Tony, I think, can actually contribute to this conversation by saying, hey, I want to bring your attention right here, and he can highlight something. And so Tony is actually writing here. This is Tony, not me. Here's my hands. I'm not doing this. Tony is doing this from his viewing position. And so this is something that, thanks, Tony, that is actually really good feedback from students. That can give you information about, hey, this might not be right. Hey, you need to account for this. And so this is a tool that puts this class to be not just one direction for me to the students, but they can also give me feedback. Now, unfortunately, Tony's wrong in this case, that I didn't spell this wrong, and I don't want this annotation to be here. So I can go to the annotate button and clear all of my viewers' drawings. Now, unfortunately, we know when we give students an opportunity to do things, and this isn't necessarily something that we want students to do, now I have a student, Tony, who is being disruptive in the class, and I want to prevent students from doing this annotation. So I can go to More, and I can disable participants annotation. And now Tony can no longer annotate on here. However, I need to clear out all drawings to make sure Tony's chicken scratch on my work isn't presented out. So this is a tool that's really important to make sure that if you want that feedback from students, you can get it, but you can prevent it as well. Also at this time, since I'm sharing things, students can also, or anybody in a meeting can share things. And I think it's really important that you be familiar with how you can prevent sharing. So let me go ahead and stop this share. And so at this point, anybody in the meeting can actually start sharing things and can maybe take distraction away from what the meeting is supposed to be doing. So if you go to share screen and the little arrow, there is advanced sharing options. And here you can select who can share, and you may want to say only the host can share, right? In a lot of lecture situations, you may only want to transmit information to students, or to all the meeting participants. But there could be a situation in which you want students to share information or meeting participants to share information. And so this is how you can choose to select whether only the host can share out or if you want other people to share as well. By default, it is on all participants, but you can change that if you want to. So Tony, are there any questions in class or in chat right now that we can answer?
Yeah, Scott Beckman has a question about recording.
Yes.
And he tried to record this meeting and was told that he couldn't. How do we set our meeting so that only the host has recording permissions? Is this the default? I believe only the host can.
I believe only the host or co-host can set recordings to happen. And I would probably recommend that is an important thing that you maintain and not change that. That way there's only one source of that meeting or class out there in the ether. There are situations, and we know about them in the college, that when people have joined meetings, and I'll discuss this later, their camera was automatically turned on and it wasn't the best view coming out. And so you may There may be situations, one, that you can turn off video. So if you quickly go to the participants, hit more and press stop video, that will then turn off Tony's video, and Tony actually won't be able to turn that video back on. And that may be a situation. Now, in the recordings.
So I got a message that says you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it.
Right, and so that's, again, a piece of control that you have. One additional piece of information here is who is the host. That is the person who makes the meeting. So when I set up this meeting, I am the host, but I may want a TA present in the room, or an administrator, or an assistant in the room who can help manage what's going on. So I can make Tony a co-host, even though I stopped his video. I can make Tony a co-host of the meeting, and now instead of Tony being our participant in the meeting, Tony has the same controls that I have. So Tony can start and stop video, Tony can manage chat, Tony can start and stop the recording. And so I would recommend, for meetings and your classroom environment, make sure that there is a co-host there who can help manage the participants, the chat, and all of the host type features. Any other questions to address right now, or are we doing good on questions?
So there is a question in chat about Ray Combs mentioned that sometimes he's found it nice to dial in for voice and use Zoom as the screen. How do we do that? So you can go ahead, do you know where that option is? And when you join audio, it asks you.
So I'm going to leave computer audio here. Now, actually, I'm just going to end this meeting and start it again to give you an example. If you wanted to join a voice call, instead of pressing join computer audio, you can go over to phone call. And here are the phone numbers that you could dial into with your cell phone or your desk, not your desk phone, because people shouldn't be at their desks in the close future, or your home phone. You can dial into, and it will ask you what your meeting ID is, and you can put those numbers in, and then you will be connected to the meeting on your computer for video and chat and participation aspects, but the audio will be piped through the phone for you. And that may be something, if you don't have good enough audio on your computer, or you don't have a headset available, that may be the best option for you. I will note that does cause some problems from a managing the meeting environment, that you don't have full control over the audio that's being sent from a person on a phone. So that is something that you really have to remind people who are connected via the phone. Please make sure you are muted and that you're controlling your environment on your end.
So the one thing to note on there is that there was a participant ID on there, and when you enter that participant ID, it joins your phone audio with your video meeting that you're doing. And so what that does is it only makes you show up one time in the meeting rather than being in with audio and in with video. It marries the two together. So it's important to take note of that participant ID and enter it when you're asked. And then that way you're just one participant in the meeting. So we've had a couple of questions. Can the co-host share a screen? Anybody can share the screen. You can control, as a host or co-host, who can share, but anybody can share their content. For example, I will share my screen here, and it says this will stop the other person's screen sharing. Do I want to continue? And I'm going to share a whiteboard with people. And when I do that, you should all now see a whiteboard. And I'm just drawing with the touchpad on my Mac, because Mac doesn't think that touchscreen displays is a thing.
And this is a wonderful time to annotate on Tony's whiteboard. As anybody in this meeting, you have the ability to start annotating on this whiteboard, as we've already covered. So if anybody wants to jump in here and draw something on Tony's screen, feel free to. Again, that's generally at the bottom on your control bar. If there is not an annotate button, it's under the more screen.
Somebody annotated.
There we go. We're getting some drawings now. And you can see there's a little bit of a lag there, but they show up relatively quickly.
It shows up when you stop drawing and take your either finger or pen or whatever you're using. Hey, Scott Beckman even labeled that it was his. So there are different types of annotations you can do. You can do shapes, you can do straight pen input, you can do text.
And I think this is an important thing, that there is this whiteboard that is built into Zoom that you can use, but you can also share out an app that acts as a whiteboard. So when I'm teaching class, I typically share out using OneNote, which is Microsoft's note-taking software. If you're using an iPad, you can share out any app on your iPad, such as Notability is a common note-taking whiteboard type application. And so you can share out that and write on your screen with your pen or stylus. And so these are all possible options and use cases that might be right for your meeting or your classroom.
So I'll show you my controls here so that you can see, well, so there was an option that I could, it went away because I stopped the whiteboard, but there was an option that I could save the content that was on the whiteboard.
I'll take the meeting back and show that.
All right. I'm going to stop my share.
So I've taken this information back. Well, you can't actually annotate on your own screen. Hold on, actually, let me share my whiteboard. And now as I draw, and so say this is a full set of notes of squiggles, you can save this whiteboard and it saves it, and you can show where it saved it to, and you can see it saves it into the documents, Zoom, and in this specific meeting, and it saved that as a figure that I could use later if I absolutely needed to, if that was something that you really wanted in your environment. Okay, before we close out some of the Zoom basics, I did want to comment on using a microphone. While computers are getting better and better with their built-in microphones, part of that is the quality that gets sent out is not only a factor, is not only representative of the quality of the microphone, but also the environment that you're in. I am in a large empty room right now, wearing probably the best case scenario, a lapel mic. And so even though I'm wearing a quality microphone and it's close to me and positioned correctly, because I'm in an environment that is very echoey, you're getting some of that echo back as well. If you're in your room, in your office at home, your office on campus, that space is probably still pretty echoey. And even if you have a really good MacBook or a really good Surface, that built-in microphone is going to pick up those echoes a lot more than a lapel type mic, a headset with a mic built in, or you can even use a set of earbuds that might have come with your cell phone that has a microphone built in. The quality of the audio that you send out is actually a really big factor in keeping attention of students for long 50 minutes longer sessions. So really make sure you have a good quality microphone that you can use.
So let's see, we may have a couple of questions. So some people are having a little bit of a hard time finding where the annotate option might show up. So it might be a little different based on the client that you're using.
The first thing is something has to be shared. So right now I am, this screen should be shared. So there should be an annotate option at the bottom, or it may be under the more category. Actually, it may not be I think when a full screen is being shared, and it might be this screen, this type of screen share does not enable annotation. Since this is a video stream that's being sent through, this may not be enabled for annotation. But if instead, say, I think I can do it. It depends on the share. So if you have a whiteboard shared or a specific app that may take into account whether the annotation is possible. The annotation option should be at the bottom, or in chat, it was just mentioned that it might be under view options at the top of the screen. And so those may be a couple different cases that you can access that annotation. It depends on the client that you're using, whether it's a desktop client, and it depends on what type of device you're connecting on, whether it's a PC, a Mac, or an iDevice, whatever. Let me take a quick look at chat to make sure. I think that's the majority of the questions about basic use of the Zoom client. One of the big takeaways here is to really make sure that you are connected via the WSU single sign-on, so you're authenticated and you'll have the proper control of the meetings that you're supposed to be hosting. So I'm going to move on now to scheduling meetings. This will be of use primarily for anybody who wants to hold a meeting. This probably would not be how I would recommend scheduling a class, a lecture, or office hours. That would be slightly different. There are lots of ways that you can schedule a meeting. In the Zoom client, you can see there is a schedule button. We actually, within IT here, it's not recommended that you use this because this actually has a different set of options than you would have in other places. What we actually recommend is that you go to the Zoom portal. So if you go to wsu.zoom.us, that will bring you to the Zoom portal, at which point you can press sign in, and this will log you in via the WSU system, and now you're on you're logged into the WSU Zoom system. To schedule a meeting, you can go to meetings and then schedule a new meeting. When you do this, you can start naming things. So one topic, demo meeting, a meeting for VCEA training. I can schedule when this is going to be. I can pick a time, I can pick a duration, and if I wanted a recurring meeting, so if maybe this was a faculty meeting that you wanted to schedule every other week, you can select recurring.
And the duration does not matter.
I'll get back to that in just a moment. Where you can select, do I want to repeat something every single day? And I can select how often it repeats. 1 would be every day, 2 would be every other day, etc. You could pick weekly, and that would allow you to select whether, if this is for a class, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's important to note by default, it selects the current day. So if I was scheduling a meeting for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I need to make sure I uncheck Tuesday. And then there's lots more options that I think you can get familiar with very quickly. I would recommend, I always use an end by date for when you want that occurrence to end, or after a specific number of meetings. So you pick the time that you want your meeting to start with, and you can pick a duration. But it's important to note that that duration doesn't really matter. You can go much longer than this or much shorter than this. This is essentially for a calendar invite. How long should I block off? Your meetings can run longer if you want them to. Now, as you go down, you can pick more specific options that you want. So if this was a meeting that you wanted to be private and you really wanted to ensure that only the people who are supposed to show up do, you could require a meeting password and it will automatically generate one that you can set up. The video option is a really important option. This is the option that says when the host or when a participant joins, should I automatically start their video? This should always be off. That way, when, for example, if a student is at home and they join that meeting, that makes sure that their camera is off until they say it is on. That will prevent any potential mishaps from happening that you really don't want to happen. Audio says, do I want to restrict whether people connect over computer audio or telephone? We now recommend to use both here. These meeting options are really important options as well, because they're going to affect your experience as a host. If you select enable join before host, that's going to allow participants into your meeting space before you have. That may be fine, but what also happens is every time a person joins, you get an email. And so that email is going to build up. It might get quite annoying. And so we actually recommend that you don't check that. We do recommend for almost everything to mute participants when they enter. So everyone's mic and camera from the above settings are muted when they join. A waiting room is a great feature potentially for advising or office hours. A waiting room, when you enable a waiting room, when somebody joins, they get dropped into a waiting room that you have to allow them into the meeting space. So for example, if you have an advising situation, when you have an advising situation, you may want students to wait in a waiting room, and so you can then invite one student in at a time for advising. Once one student leaves, you can invite another one in. This could also be very useful for office hours environments. And so this would be an option for the right use case, enable the waiting room. Authenticated users would allow only people who are signed in through the WSU single sign-on to join. There are pros and cons to this. We're actually recommending that you don't do this right now, just to make sure participants can get into the meeting as fast as possible. However, if you are hosting that meeting, make sure you are logged in through the single sign-on. I see a question in class about the waiting room getting listed alphabetically or first come, first serve. Tony, do you know the answer to that? I don't know the answer to that. This will be an important thing that nobody's going to know everything about Zoom, right? Because we all have different use cases. But I think if we all practice once or twice, we'll figure a lot of these things out very, very quickly. Breakout room periods.
Before you leave that option, one thing that I think is important to note, especially for staff or faculty that might be holding meetings with outside entities, you definitely don't want to click the box that says only authenticated users can join, because in those scenarios, you're going to be sending them a link and they're just going to click the link to join, unless they happen to be a Zoom user because of their affiliation.
Recording the meeting automatically can be a good option in the right scenarios. This will start recording the meeting, Tony, I believe when the host joins. As soon as the host joins, it starts recording.
Depends on if you have enabled join before host.
So it actually, Tony just corrected me, it starts recording when the first person enters the room. So if you have the option enabled for join before host enabled, it will start recording when the first person joins. So again, this is a case that I would recommend not having enable join before host. It will start recording right when you come in at that point. When you select this, note you can have on the local computer, in the cloud. Again, do it in the cloud. It removes one extra step for you.
So can you just show them, click the options that we would enable for an advising session or a meeting or office hours, and then click the session, and then we'll wipe it, and then we'll show the options.
We have a number of settings that we recommend based upon the use case. In all use cases, we recommend that the video for the host and the participants be off when they join. Second, for audio, we recommend that both computer audio and telephone be allowed. For meeting options, for all cases, we recommend enable join before host to be no. Now things get a little bit different. For a class environment, what we recommend is no enable join before host, yes mute participants, and record meeting automatically in the cloud is probably a yes, but there are cases in which you wouldn't want that to happen. And we'll address some of that probably later in the Blackboard and class session. If you are doing an advising or office hours environment, this is where we would still have mute participants upon entry, but we would enable waiting room and we would not record that session, right? If you're doing advising or office hours, which you may be talking about students' grades, you definitely do not want to record that because that recording is accessible in the cloud. And so that is something you do not want to join or you do not want to record. For a general meeting, you still don't want to enable join before host, but that may be something that you do want to allow just because people can shuffle in at different times. You don't want to enable a waiting room, and depending on what the meeting is, you may want to record it or maybe not, and that depends. And so those would be the different recommended settings to have for your different meetings. So let me take a look at chat and see what the big ones are.
So I got a question privately to me about showing how to pre-assign breakout rooms. I said it's kind of complicated and we may go over that in the classroom portion later.
The breakout rooms can be really useful. There are some caveats with it. You can pre-assign them, but that's a very specific use case that might be beyond the scope of this meeting.
So we had one question: if there are two TAs for the same class taking classes alternatively each week, should we use alternative hosts to have one single meeting link? Those are somewhat separate issues.
So one, I didn't call out this alternative host option line. This is how you can set beforehand who can act as a host or a co-host or anything else. So this is where if you have a TA or an administrative assistant that you may want to act as a co-host, you can put their email addresses in on this administrative host line and they can act as a host or co-host. On the TA front, I would make the TAs alternative hosts here, but I probably just put them both there and have them work that out at the back end. I think trying to make so many recurring meetings based upon the TA attending is getting a little too specific. Yeah. Okay, so that essentially wraps up our basic Zoom and our basic scheduling options.
I would like to talk about some of the, just at this point, we may cover it later, but some of the options in Zoom that might apply to everyone. We've talked about a couple a little bit briefly, but everybody we encourage to go to wsu.zoom.us and poke around and see what you have in there. Everybody's got a profile setting. So I'm in Steve's account right now, and Steve has an auto-generated personal meeting ID that he is probably never going to remember. You can edit this personal meeting ID and make it whatever you want. I set mine to my WSU phone number so that it's something that's easy to remember and you can give that out to people. Another thing that you can also do is you can go to personal link and you can customize this link and it will give you a short form. So if you're an advisor or a support person, so like my group, you could have that as part of your signature line so that if somebody needs to reach you for help, if you have walk-in, drop-in hours, whatever, then you'll get a notification that somebody's waiting for a meeting for you. You get different options. We talked about the importance of using the web interface to do some of your meeting scheduling. It's not a requirement, it's a seamless experience across whatever device you're doing. It is different if you're using the Zoom app on a PC or a Mac versus using Outlook to schedule it. You can, in most cases, get to most of the same options, but I've found that some of the options aren't available in the app. They're only available through Outlook or through the web. If you have recordings, we'll go over this a little bit more in detail for the class portion, but for those of you that aren't
doing class stuff, you will have recordings, and in your recording session, you will be able to go. So Steve's meeting that he hosted as a dummy meeting for us to use, you'll see over here that it says it's processing and it's recording. Maybe did we not stop that yet?
No, if you just end the meeting, it says processing and recording at the same time.
So it is currently working on that file. It may take a little while to do that, but we'll go to one that's already been done.
The next one, if you would.
Okay.
The Chemi 321. Yep.
All right. So we're going to go to the files for this meeting, and you'll see that you have shared screen with speaker view. You can download that file. You can get a link to that file that you can send out to people. It's the same thing as this shareable link. You can get an audio only portion of the meeting, and you can also get an audio transcript of the meeting. If you have hearing impaired, you need to be able to have a text transcription of that. It is built into Zoom. We will tell you that it is not accurate. So what you have to do is go watch your video and then change the text that it auto-typed to be the actual text that you hear it say. And so you either have to go through it in real time and correct and fix it, or you have to just go through the transcription and replace it. One thing that you can do is if you, I am going to go to this recording. I'm going to just tap on this here. And like for this video today, there was quite a bit of portion where you guys were waiting. Somebody needs to mute.
Everyone should just receive the poll. The answer is true. The answer is true.
The appearance.
The answer is true.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the video coming through here. Like, where is that coming from? Somebody didn't mute themselves. All right, let's, there we go. So if we didn't so the beginning of this video today that's going to be recorded, I'm going to go in and I am going to edit this video, and I am going to set the playback range, and I'm going to go find all the stuff where I was in the dean's meeting that you guys were watching me but not hearing me. I am going to go find where that is, and I am going to snip it. And you can actually use your arrow keys to go 1 second at a time. And if I find that it was, if it ran long, I can actually back it off down here. And you'll see over on the right-hand side, this is the audio transcript as it was real time. And there's a little pen that you can edit it so that if it didn't catch the right thing that you said, and I guarantee that it won't, you can go edit that. So I am not going to append Steve's video. I'm not going to hit save, but you would hit save, and then the link that you send out to people only has the section that you selected for them to view. We will also tell you that if you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation where somebody did not have their video muted, turned off, and they came on an embarrassing situation, well, we can't go backwards in time, but before you publish that link, give our IT department a call, and we can help you download that video, crop that section out, and re-upload that video. So there are some help options available. You'll note it's a little bit confusing. This actually opened a new tab for this video, so I'm just going to close that tab. Now I'm back to picking my files, editing the videos, going back to my recordings, seeing my list of recordings there. So later today, once this meeting that we're in right now gets done, I'll get an email saying your video is ready, and then I can go and edit it and send it out, and then, which is what we will be doing, and I'm going to go chop the video into pieces so that we have it segmented for the relevant parts. So we encourage people to just go through, look at your profile, look at your settings. You can set your default options for when you join a meeting, whether your video is going to be enabled by default.
Go to settings. There's a lot of options under settings that you can set up for you personally. And the one that starts out with what are your default options for when you're scheduling a meeting. So if you know you always say don't enable join before host, you can set this here, and you can set a lot of default options for your meetings. When you go a little bit further down, You then have your in-meeting options. Do you want your chat to be on? Do you want your chat to be visible? Do you want to allow saving of chats? What do you want to happen in your meetings? So one of the things that I think is, for me, a great feature is display end of meeting experience feedback. Every single time you disconnect from a Zoom meeting by default, it gives you an option to let Zoom know, was this good or was this bad, via thumbs up or thumbs down. I've gotten past that point of providing the feedback, so I've turned off that option.
They're not paying for your time?
I'm not, no. And you can enable specific things. If you want polling to be enabled, you can enable that here. That's something we'll go over in the PowerPoint option. Do you want to always have the host only being able to share, or do you want everyone to be enabled to share? These are some options that you can set up beforehand. Note the things with the little V next to them, those are features that are only enabled on specific clients. So not all of these features are available on every device, so just be aware of that.
You can choose whether or not you auto-save the whiteboard content. We just encourage people to go through and read through. They're pretty easy to read, plain English, and you can set some options that may be handy and may apply to your scenario.
I guess I'll share one more thing in Zoom before we wrap up. I know a lot of us are moving towards having meetings at home, and maybe there's things going on in the background.
That's not 6 feet, sorry, gotta get away.
Thank you. One of the things that is built into Zoom now is that you can apply a virtual background to your camera. And so when you go to start your video, there's a choose virtual background, and you can set up a background. Is it going to recognize here? Oh, this camera specifically doesn't allow me, but it's very camera dependent. Let me switch over to the other camera and see if that one will work. Hi.
So we got a couple of questions when you have a point.
Yeah, okay, so this camera in this environment isn't doing too well for this, but that may be an option that's worthwhile. Let me look at some questions. Can you edit meetings after you made them? Yes, you can. So when you're on the Zoom web portal, you can go to your meetings and select a meeting, and then this is going to show you everything you've selected, but there is an edit this meeting option. So you can edit this meeting, and this happened to be a recurring meeting, and so you can select to edit only this meeting or all of the instances, just like in Outlook. So that's a similar option. You do not need a solid.
I think they're talking about the virtual background.
Yeah, you don't need a solid color, but a more uniform color. It is necessary. As of right now, I haven't heard any major concerns about Zoom having a huge influx. Over the past 2 weeks, many universities have transitioned to Zoom. And so I haven't heard of any major problems so far. One thing to be aware of, and as we transition to teleworking, if you have too many people on a single wireless access point or network node, then yes, that one access point can get overloaded. But that's not a Zoom problem. That's a local infrastructure issue.
The only limit that we have for Zoom is 300 participants in one meeting. So that's really probably only going to apply to a classroom type setting. But, so one thing that I can show you also to go along with adjusting meetings, if you're in the meeting, so I'm going to share my screen a second. And that's going to stop Steve's share. I'm going to share my desktop. So, there it is. Oh, well, it's not going to show the Zoom application because it intentionally doesn't do that. I'm not really sure how to show you this, but there are options where you can go to the more settings. Is it?
Can you make me a host? I'll show it on mine.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Where are you? You're a guest. Of course you are.
Am I? Oh, that's because I'm signed on to 2 different computers at once.
Are you in this meeting elsewhere?
Well, I'm on these 2 computers, and so you can only be logged into Zoom on 1 computer at a time. And so I logged into our demo computer, and that made me a guest in this actual meeting. So I'm going to share screen. I'm going to share the entire screen. Let me make sure my email is closed. And let's go ahead and share the screen. And now,
Oh, mute your audio.
I am muted, but my computer. No, I'm good. I'm good. So you should be able to see the controls. So what did you want to demo about the controls?
Well, so that if you didn't have some of the settings, you can now tell it to mute everybody when they come into the room. If you didn't have that enabled before, you can still go do that. It's under Manage Participants, under More. So you can mute them all now, you can unmute them all now, and if you go to More,
You can change a lot of those settings.
then there are settings that you can still set after the fact. You can lock the meeting, so if people are late to class, I mean, obviously in this environment, that's not going to apply, but you can lock the meeting so that people cannot come in. They will get a message that says this meeting is locked. So one question that I saw in chat was regarding if we do not check enable join before host, what would the students see if they try and join too early? What you would see is just a white screen that says host is not in meeting yet, or this meeting is not started yet, and they'll just be sitting there waiting, and then once the host joins, they will they'll be brought in.
And this is what happens when you allow annotation to occur freely. So Tony, what do you think about, I think that's the majority of the questions. What about taking a 5-minute break?
Yeah, if nobody else has any questions, we're going to take a break so that people can get refreshments, use the restroom, and then we will we'll come back and we will discuss Zoom in the classroom and Blackboard. Judy Theodorson asked about attendance, and I'm guessing your question is on taking attendance. I don't know if you could be a little more specific, and she said yes. So we'll discuss that a little bit in the Blackboard section, but I will tell you that we do not have any perfect answers for you, because at this time we cannot require that they are in class during class time, because they may have to go later to download all of their video recorded classes and watch them at a later time. So
Judith, are you asking about for classes or just for meetings? Because if you're not going to come back after the break, I'll try to cover that really quickly right now. I'll go ahead and demo this real quick. I'm going to take over sharing the screen and back to our demo machine. You can see attendance via the web portal. When you go to the web portal and you go to reports, there's then a usage option. And here you can see all of your meetings, and obviously I've had a lot of these as I start meetings and stop them. But on the right-hand side here, there is a participants. And each of these are a link to tell you who's been in what meeting. So if I go to this one, right, and you go to meeting participants, that's not showing anything worthwhile. Normally it shows who was in it, right? So it shows I was logged in and then I was there as a guest. And so this will show everybody who's joined, but not entirely unique in terms of who's there. So this showed 4 people were there, but that's because I joined once and then joined again. This also.
Do you want me to show my recording from yesterday where we had 100 participants?
Yeah, go ahead and share that out.
All
So
right, so
Tony's going to show the meeting from yesterday where we had over 100 participants in it. And so Tony's going to take over, and I'll talk about that attentiveness score that was there. Zoom will generate this attentiveness score. That is the percentage of the time that that person was in the meeting, that they had the Zoom window as the primary focus. So if they clicked away to look at their email or to start Netflix or to watch, to browse things on Reddit, that would start ticking down their attentiveness score.
Is it here? Where is it?
No, go to reports on the left. Usage. And then there was our meeting yesterday. And you can see we had, what time was it? So it shows you the start time. Yesterday we started at, no, this is it. So you can see.
Just right before 1.
Right? So this started just before 1, and you can see how many minutes people were in, and of that time that they were in, what their focus was in the Zoom meeting. So I would not say this is a perfect tool by any means, but it is an easily accessible.
We must have been entertaining yesterday because everybody's 100%. We're not sure that this is 100% accurate, but
It's a tool that you have.
you can see where people came in and dropped off, and so people, we did not have, what did it say, 300 and...
Yeah. This does not count unique visitors. Oh, actually at the top, go back, and at the top,
393 participants.
there is a show unique users. And now the attentiveness goes away because this is people coming in and leaving, and it shows for each of these people how long they were in the meeting. And so it's something. It's not perfect, but it's something that you have.
So if our meeting went 130-ish minutes, we can tell people that were there the whole time. And people
Who was
that came
there?
in.
They may not have been paying attention the whole time, but they were there. Let me look at chat real quick.
I'm gonna stop my share if you want to go back.
I'm just taking a look at chat and seeing if there's anything else. Shujan, yes, you can do that. That's getting somewhat specific in use, and I would say contact Tony's group for the specific help on that. And you may have colleagues who are very familiar with this. And so that's something that you can do, but is getting quite specific here. So I think at this point, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. It's currently 10:46. So we'll pick up at 10:52. So go ahead and take a few minute break, and we'll come back with really focusing on the use of Zoom in Blackboard for the classroom environment and some of the tools that you can use there. Thanks, everybody. Can you mute the room for a few minutes?
Yeah.